Welcome, staff and faculty members of Anytown University. Today we're gonna have a training section that will give you an oversight, especially for those new one employees and also for current employees that work at student affairs in regards to the role of student affairs at the college. In this presentation, we're going to explore a little bit of the history of student affairs. We're going to talk about laws and regulations. We're also going to talk about any possible areas of discriminations that we need to be aware. We're going to talk about diversity and the impact on student affairs professionals. And we're going to talk about the expectations of any town university have in regards of the role of student affairs professionals in this institution. So we're gonna start the presentation, and hope that you enjoy. Thank you. The history of student affairs began during the colonial days. During that time, higher education institutions considered students immature that required adult supervision. A doctrine called in locus parenthesis that stands for in place of the parents was used, according to Dallas Long in his research paper The Foundation of Student Affairs. The mid 1800s, American university went through a radical change. Faculty started adopting a European philosophy that focused on the training of the intellect, in where faculty were working more in their doctoral degrees and research and working less in discipline and mentorship on the graduate students. Then in the 1960s, student affairs were called to assist campuses in a student activism events and movements that were causing injuries and death among several students. Because of these incidents, student affairs were tasked to work in areas of conflict resolution, communication, and social justice. In the 1980s and 1990s, student affairs started experimenting changes in diversity uh, of the student population. During that time, students, minority students, um, numbers were great, as well as the number of women attending college, and that represented a big cultural change um, in the diversity of population of students at that time. So student affairs needs to be prepared for that. Then in the now up today, in the 2000, student affairs are dealing with more international students that are participating in studying abroad, but also international but other students that want to participate and have been impacted by student abroad. So student affairs office professionals are there to assist students that have experienced emotional changes because of this exposure to different cultures. Let's talk about some laws and regulations in student affairs. Let's begin with the First Amendment, which is the freedom of speech. As you know, for example, last year there was an incident in 2017 in the University of Virginia where there was a different two groups of students protesting against the removal of a statue of a Confederate soldier. So the status was be removed from campus, and there were some students that support that. However, there was other folks that do not want this statue to be removed from the campus. So this caused an incident, and there was tensions among different groups, and that escalated until one of the individuals drove his car towards the protesters and injured and killed one person. So sometimes that freedom of speech could lead to incidents. So it is very important to establish a balance between students' freedom of expression and a safe environment for all students, which represent a challenge for student affairs staff members. However, I believe that uh, affairs staff members could develop a moral communication um, training that could be student led uh, in order to alleviate the tensions among this group and avoid these incidents. There was also talking about the Second Amendment, which is the use of guns in campuses. Now, I found this article from a blog in the University of Georgia Law School, in where they were discussing that back in April 2016, that apparently a bill was passed in Georgia that would allow individuals to carry guns in public institutions. Of course, there were several people that protest that bill, and they got a lot of signatures. However, this is not dictated by the Second Amendment, but rather by laws that share to balance the consideration of safety and security. Campus carry is only a result of legislative enactments that offer a derivative entitlement based on the Second Amendment, not a right based on the Second Amendment. And pretty much the campus are designed to be a safe place. We also talk about the Fifth Amendment that protects individuals from being compelled to be witnesses against themselves in criminal cases. However, when it comes to student affairs, there is a code of conduct manual that students need to follow, and each student's behavior goes against the college code of conduct, he or she may be expelled from college. And that's it. You didn't follow the rules of the college, you are in trouble. Now, there are some several state and federal regulations that I would like to discuss. One of them is the American with Disability Act of 2018, in which established that students with disabilities should be provided with special accommodations by their institutions. So, in the Anytime institution, we can establish an IDP, individual development plan, that students can be do with their advisor in order to provide accommodations. Then we also have a drug-free school and community act, which for higher education institution, if they want to receive financial aid uh, from federal funds, they need to prove that they are working in campaigns to prohibit the use of illicit drugs and the consume of alcohol. So you can do that by working with student affairs and establish um, a, something in the code of conduct where students understand that they cannot consume alcohol or illicit drugs. Now, the FERPA, the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, changed for students once they become in college. They become adults and independent. So it is important to explain parents and students during a meeting probably with student affairs staff members that um, parents cannot have access to student records unless the student permit it. So in order to do that, students may want to sign a waiver that can allow parents to see their records. And that's something that student affairs can work to establish that waiver. So, um, if the student wants their parent to have access to the record, they just need to sign the waiver. So now we can look at possible areas of discrimination in student affair and what are some solutions to avoid them. So when we look at area discrimination, we can look first race, color, age, religion, sex, national origins, marital status, sexual orientation, disability, genetic information, and veterans um, status. So student affairs professionals should work with the college administration by creating and establish appropriate processes to implement and enforce them in order to avoid possible areas of discrimination. So one thing that student affairs could do is they can do, for example, an annual training to talk about sexual harassment and discrimination, for example, and they can provide that to students, staffers, and faculty in order to make to so they can identify what are some of the conducts that they can do. They can also state that for the student in the code of conduct, so make students aware of that. And that's areas that we can possibly avoid for discrimination, right? Diversity plays an important role in students' affairs. I consider diversity as the heart of student affairs. And we pretty much saw that during the history of student affairs. Uh, we have seen how student affairs have been transformed based on the diverse population of the students. Uh, and this transformation is not just also to the students, but also goes to the partners that we work with, because there are different communities that we have to deal with. We also have with the different departments, so we have to create very mindful mindset when it comes to diversity. We need to make sure that we create a welcome environment for everyone. And there was a blog that I read about an Asian lady. It's called Contested Issues in Student Affairs, and she shared her story of how shameful she used to feel about being an Asian and started college. How that impacted a little bit her identity of that. So that's played a big role in student affair, students' identity. So we need to make sure that we encourage them, students, to share their stories. We make to make sure that they're part of the campus. So I think that by doing workshops, doing summer bridge programs, or doing other programs to integrate students into the college life, we promote diversity in college. So what do we have when we talk about expectations of any town university professionals working in student affairs office? Uh, I believe that we should, as professionals, we should be up to date with the latest technologies. So for example, most students are using social media tools. So student affair officials should be up to date with the latest social media tools, since it's the main way to communicate with the students, because that's the technology that they use, not much of an email. I also consider that we should use more assessments. I think assessment will be a way to measure our progress in terms of student learning, but also we can measure through assessment how the students are participating, and we can also measure other areas of retention and hiring. So that would be good things that I would expect student affairs to do more when it comes to assessment. I also think that we should collaborate more with community partners, like expand more with other departments. So in that way, student affairs will continue do their job as the front page of the college, which I think we are the front page of the college. So that's what we have to do.